Good morning or good afternoon, depending on where you're dialing in from. Thanks for joining us today. We have an update from Kingfisher Metals on their summer 2023 results, as well as I think they're going to do a bit of an overview and refresher on the company. As always, this presentation will contain forward-looking statements. You can find those in the presentation on Kingfisher's website, which was recently updated, so I'd encourage you to go take a look. And as always, there will be a Q&A section, so feel free to input any questions you have in the Q&A box. And with that all out of the way, I'd like to introduce Dustin Perry, CEO, and Gayle Febbo, VP Exploration of Kingfisher Metals. Hi, guys.
Hi, Deb. Thanks for hosting us.
Yeah, thanks for joining. So looking forward to hearing about the results. I don't know if you want to take it away.
Yeah, I will. So I'm just going to do an overview, run through our presentation, and then we'll focus a little bit more on the results. But there's a little bit more to talk about, given that the entirety of the project will be permitted this year. So our focus, it will still be on Mary, but it will expand to being able to cover more areas. So yeah, disclaimer: go look at this on our website. We're geos. We're optimistic. We make forward-looking statements. So just to run through the cap structure, there's 130 million shares outstanding. The cash is coming down, so we are going to have to raise for our field program coming up. Of those warrants outstanding, approximately half of them are 15-cent warrants that expire in August of 2025, and then the other warrants expire in June of this coming year. So a little bit just to touch on here, one thing that really does separate us from our peers, similar sized companies, is the level of insider ownership and institutional ownership. So we've got a 20% shareholder, Alex Gubbins out of Peru. His family is one of the largest mining families down there. We've got Commodity Capital, which is a fund out of Munich, Crescat Capital out of Denver, Plethora out of Utrecht near Amsterdam. And then most recently, Lowell Resources Fund Management, which is an ASX-listed fund out of Melbourne, came in on our last financing. So we're well represented around the world, and obviously these groups see something in our team and our project, and they've done extensive due diligence already. So with that in mind, just going to touch on the team quickly. So I'm a geo. I've worked pretty much exclusively in BC. I've worked on probably over 50 porphyry projects, focused on the discovery stage. Did my bachelor's degree at UBC in geology. Grew up in Vancouver. Gayle, our VPX, has a lot of experience, and she's going to touch on that. But also Charlie Gregg is involved. He's won the Prospector of the Year award, both the Roundup award plus the PDHC award for his saddle North porphyry discovery that was purchased by Newmont several years ago. I think it was around 480 million. He has extensive, he's one of the most experienced people in the Golden Triangle. He worked for the Geological Survey of Canada, mapping the entirety of the Golden Triangle. He's mapped in our project before, worked with Gayle before at Brucejack. Seasoned vet. But I'll let Gayle just touch on her Golden Triangle experience and why she's such a valuable asset of the team before I go on.
Yeah, I'm also a geologist, born and raised in northern BC, so naturally ended up with almost all of my 20 years experience working in this kind of northern BC neck of the woods. A lot of experience coming from Brucejack, KSM, where I did my master's thesis. More recently, working at Galore Creek. A lot of my work focuses on structural controls and trying to understand, where the mineralization is focused and why. And this region is really structurally controlled, so that was kind of a natural area of interest working in this area. And worked actually at this project twice in the past, 2007 and again 2017. So it's pretty neat to come back full circle.
So just to touch on our project, many people were familiar with our Gold Range project, where we spent 2 years drilling, made a grassroots discovery there, hit that magical 100 gram meter threshold there. But we've turned our focus to the Golden Triangle. Reason for that is it really is the place to be in BC or Western Canada if you want to find a monster copper gold system. But it also is host to incredible high grade gold systems such as Brucejack and Snip. The reason we didn't start in the Golden Triangle though is because when we listed, the market was quite hot temporarily, and it was a little too challenging to put together, too expensive to put together the type of project we wanted. Our MO all along has been to go or districts, prove up a district, something that a major is actually going to want to, not a postage stamp. And we waited until that opportunity came about, and it did last year. We consolidated 2 assets and renamed it Highway 37, given the proximity to the highway. So I'm not going to get into Gold Range. There's a little bit of info in our presentation, more on the website. It's strictly going to focus on the Golden Triangle in this chapter. So with that in mind, the Golden Triangle is on fire these days. Majors have been coming into there in mass. Newmont recently acquired Newcrest for $20 billion. Newmont now likely has the largest land position with Brucejack, the Chautauqua area, which borders us to the north, and then they've got the JV at Galore Creek. Teck also has Shaft and Galore Creek. Keena's developing the SK Creek deposit, and also has the Snip project. Seabridge, also a developer, you could say, given what they're putting into their camp and their tailings impoundment ideas near the highway. So Seabridge has the KSM project where Gayle did her master's, and they've actually recently discovered a new district in the Snip area called the Snip Iskut district. Ascot further south, Hekla's involved further south. Freeport actually opted a project similar to our project down here called Todd Creek. So there's a lot of activity. I think people are here, or these groups are here for a number of reasons. One are the incredibly supportive Indigenous groups in the area, the Tahltan First Nation and the Nisga'a First Nation. But also you've got clean hydroelectric power. So Brucejack is probably one of the only high grade mines in the world that can tout itself as being entirely powered on clean energy. You've got the Northwest Transmission Line that was built to go to the Red Chris mine. You've got a highway running through the area. You've got deep water ports in Stewart, and a really seasoned and well-trained exploration workforce. With that in mind, though, not all of the Golden Triangle is prospective. There are 4 episodes of porphyry and epithermal formation across this trend. Shaft Creek area, North Creek deposits. You've got your Chautauqua deposits, which would be Red Chris and Saddle. That area is entirely held by Newmont. And then you've got the behemoths in Sulphurette District, Treaty Creek, KSM, Brucejack. So the intrusions that are responsible for these systems at Brucejack and Treaty and KSM are Texas Creek age intrusions, and we have them on our project. Another thing a lot of people like to tout is the red line. That's really just the contact between 2 volcanic and sedimentary units. We see that as really just a window into the right erosional level where you will see a porphyry surface or an epithermal system. We've got that in multiple places. You can stand on it at a Rojo Grande target. And what it means is we do have an erosional level with these systems poking out of the ground. And we actually see the full vertical expression of these systems right up from the paleo surface, which is where the ground was when these systems formed millions of years ago, right down into the deeper levels of the porphyry system at the Williams system on the ground that we permitted this year. So something to keep in mind, and I've gone into this on a thread on Twitter I recently did, as well as on a podcast, is that you can't find a KSM anywhere in the Golden Triangle. You got to look, and we have those rocks on our project and a team with the experience of these rocks to really advance these targets.
So with that in mind, where is the next porphyry district in the Golden Triangle? Seabridge and Tudor Gold and Brucejack have outlined an incredibly impressive one. It's actually the largest undeveloped area of gold mineralization on Earth. But where do you find another one? It looks like Seabridge is on to a new one at their Iskut project. This area has similar age mineralization to the KSM camp. It had a historic resource. I think it's 187 million tons at Bronson. So these are actual 43101 compliant resources that I've digitized, and you can see the actual footprint of these systems here. And you've got a little epithermal system at Snip next to Bronson Slope. Anyways, they drilled underneath it. They found what looks like the feeders to it. They drilled across the river at Snip North, outlined a similar porphyry, and it looks like they're onto another one at Quartz Rise that sits adjacent to the old Johnny Mountain epithermal mine. So one thing that controls these deposits through the Golden Triangle are these northeast structures. And Gayle, do you want to add a little color to that?
These are really broad areas of influence, deep tapping structures, and you essentially need to get right down into the mantle to tap the gold-rich mineralization. So you can see a range of mineralization from older kind of Galore type to much younger systems, but they all have one thing in common, and they want to focus along these structures. And you see that at KSM, and then we've got a subparallel one that spans quite a distance.
Yeah, and it's interesting because on the property, our mineralized and alteration trend and the deposits themselves have this northeast orientation. And you can see that highlighted by the broad, really impressive geochemical anomalies at our project here. They line up perfectly on this trend, which actually extends to Red Chris. It disappears under Bowser Basin, which is a host mineral cover, and then it pops up again at Red Chris. So we think we are, in the right place to find another district. And the one advantage we have is that we sit adjacent to the highway here. So with all this in mind, a little overview of the project. It was an acquisition of 2 projects. It's a 4-year option to earn 100%. We're ahead of schedule on that with our spend. We named it Highway 37 because the highway goes through the eastern part of the project. You can see the highway in the bottom left here, and probably a motorhome coming down from Alaska. The Northwest Transmission Line here going to Red Chris, 60 kilometers away. And then you can actually see the Mary area here. And these kind of areas of alteration here are one thing we're really excited about. On the right, you can see our camp. It's situated at an old airstrip, the Barrage Strip. Anybody that's worked in the Iskut that's listening in here is familiar with this. It sits right adjacent to the highway. So we're able to have a camp on the road, which is easy for servicing it. This past year, we completed a program, 6 holes, a little over 2,000 meters, focused on the Mary area. So if you look at this map on the right here, the Origin option and the Golden Ridge option, the ground that we acquired off Origin was permitted in time for the drill program. Golden Ridge, their ground, it did not have an application in. We applied for that last August, and we expect to have that well in advance of the upcoming drill program this summer. So it gives us a lot more optionality. Hank, for example, and Williams are both on the Golden Ridge ground, and there's excellent potential for really making sense of a really good epithermal system there with grades up to 12 grams over 20 meters. But there's also excellent potential for hitting a porphyry at depth underneath it. That's one thing we're really excited about. But we're going to push ahead with Mary as well, which we'll get into. So just to touch on the geology, I mentioned the red line. These green units here would be the Hazelton Formation, and the gray area is Suhini. These are the main volcanic and sedimentary units you get in the Golden Triangle in the right age range. And that contact between the two, or well, it's actually an unconformity, is really, it occurred at the time when these porphyry systems formed. So if you see it present, it means these porphyry systems could be there. It doesn't mean they're there, though. We have, 2 porphyry deposits on this project already, so we know they're there. Lots of other clues, big anomalies. And, each one of these 3 trends on the project could be its own project. And it's great to have all 3 of them in a cluster, because that's what majors are going to want in the future. They're going to want areas where you have multiple systems feeding into each other, where you can operate, say, one mill. So I'm going to go through Mary, then Hank Williams, and then briefly touch on Rainbow here. So, with these in mind, this is the geochemical footprint of these anomalies. They're big. Mary is over 8 kilometers. They're robust. They're multi-element. I've just shown copper and gold here. Just for scale, and so you can wrap your head around the extent of these. I've digitized these footprints of these known mineralized centers in the Sulphurets district, but also at Saddle. At Saddle, we digitized their geochemistry, plotted up exactly the same as ours. So you can see the tenor of say, Mary, for example, is on par with Saddle. And you can see how you could fit a deposit of the size of Saddle within this area quite easily. So we have the scale, which is a really important factor when looking at exploration. So Mary's an 8-kilometer long trend. It starts at the north with Mary that saw the historic drilling. It stretches all the way south across the valley and picks up again on another mountain. Broad area of Gaussons. These Gaussons are displayed in these photos on the left. These Gaussons really are pyrite alteration, pyrite due to phyllic alteration, which would be flanking alteration to porphyry systems or potentially epithermal systems. Where we're at Mary, we're right at the top of porphyry systems, so it's gold rich, and you get some sniffs of copper in historic drilling, but really we're in the top of a system very similar to what you see at Snowfield within the KSM camp. Snowfield's really just the top of the the Mitchell deposit that's been thrust off and has about 30 million ounces of gold with not a lot of copper. But then you get into the Mitchell system with about 40 million ounces of gold, and you start getting a ton of copper. So all three of these targets, or all four of these targets on here, they all are going to see work going forward. We did a little bit of drilling. We did 2 holes at Cliff this year. We did 2 holes at the Mary Root Zone this year. And then we drilled 2 holes, one of them which we lost. It was a failed hole at Mary. And then ME would be the Gossans across the valley down to the south. So this is what Mary looks like. There's a plan view map here and then a section going through it on the right. You can see there's large chargeability footprint that extends through the mountain here. There's an area of cover in the middle of the mountain highlighted here, and it would be where the chargeability dips below it over here. This area, is really what excited us about this target when we were doing due diligence on this project. There'd been a fair bit of historic drilling, not a lot of deep drilling though. There's one deep drill hole that went into post mineral and then actually bottomed in pretty decent grade. I think about 0.4 gold equivalent over the bottom 40 or 50 meters. So the Mary deposit on its own is still open, but we see this as being a much broader system with potential to find a really big system underneath cover here. And I'm going to defer to Gayle now to really touch on the geology here.
Yeah, I mean, the simplest way to describe this broader Mary area is that we're seeing a really big pattern and alteration, a big kind of donut shape with the pyrite alteration and chargeability. And what's been drilled in no way explains that pattern. And so we're seeing evidence for something really large scale, and everything points to that lying under this cover rock, which has never been drill tested up until the 2023 with our hole on this southern step out. And so that's really our step forward is moving undercover and targeting this large scale alteration, which isn't explained by the Mary deposit alteration, because it has its own zonation that's really a lot more focused than what we're seeing.
Yeah, so with that in mind, we drilled a 100-meter step out. It would be right here. And this returned 0.43 gold equivalent over 438 meters. But then we drilled a full kilometer south on these holes here. And what was interesting was, we got quite appreciable gold grades, 0.16 gold over 240 meters. But what was interesting was there was no porphyry veining in there. There was, really high pyrite, no copper, but a fair bit of zinc. And you're not going to find zinc like that in the middle of a porphyry system. It is very clear that we're on the flanks of something. And to get that kind of gold grade, it's not economic, but it's a full kilometer away. This is a big system. It hasn't been explained yet. And this is really helping us hone in on where to drill next, which is in between these two areas. So I would say this was a big success technically. We still managed to get a good hit, which is probably the best hit for a junior of our cap by quite a ways in the Golden Triangle this year. There's been a few disappointments in the Golden Triangle. I wouldn't say this is one of them. But another thing to point out that further points to where we are in the system is we hit a high grade silver epithermal vein in our hole up here as that step out. It was 3 meters of 811 grams silver. You're not seeing epithermal veins like that in the guts of a system where you're going to get bornite. In fact, nobody's actually noted bornite in historical drill logs within the Mary area. So we're really high in the system still, and there's a lot of potential for grade to increase, but also just to find a more bulbous body that will make the potentially billion ton resource that everybody's after. This photo here really highlights our concept. You can see the outline of chargeability extends from historic drilling, which is mostly just over the other side of this ridge here. And this is a full kilometer here to where we drilled, drilling underneath the cover here. There's a lot of room in these chargeability anomalies. This is a projection here, but they really are going further into the cover. But you can see this broad alteration that you could see earlier on the image from the highway. So you can see this from the highway. And there's no way that a small, that the footprint that they already drilled could cause this. There's clearly something bigger at depth, and we do believe that there's multiple porphyry centers that are coalescing into a broader porphyry at depth here.
Yeah, this is probably a good place to point out. Sorry,
Go.
The most simple porphyry model is that you have a core of copper and around that is a donut essentially of a lot of pyrite that flanks it. And maybe you want to just point out, Dustin, that chargeability body, that kind of arcuate shape, that's what we interpret is the pyrite halo. And so you can kind of get a sense from this image of the scale of it and how much bigger in scale it is than, for example, Mary. We really think there's something of a large scale, and that's kind of what everything points to. And so it all points to kind of moving inboard of this really pyrite-rich domain into where we could find a copper stockwork body.
Yeah, and with that in mind, this has always been our MO as a company, is to take big swings. And I had a few geos that I know from university or work experience back in the day come up to me at Roundup and say, that was awesome. You guys took big step outs here and really swung for it and actually came up with something significant instead of first year on a project like a lot of other people might have done. We could have just collared in the outcropping mineralization and twinned a hole or something like that. That wasn't what we were trying to do. We're trying to actually make a discovery here. And I would say we're one step closer now. So just a quick overview, there's a fair bit of work to be done here. Nobody's done deep sensing IP or MT. There is a limit to how deep the surveys go. But there's really just a lot of drilling needs to happen here. We do have a clearer idea of where to drill going forward, but there's a lot of room for discovery, and ultimately the drill bits is what's going to do it here. So the next trend, Hank Williams trend further to the southwest, it was not permitted last year. We anticipate getting the permit sometime this spring. It's already passed technical review by the BC Mines Office. So this trend is interesting because you see the full spectrum from what was the surface during the time of these deposits being formed, right down to a porphyry system at Williams that actually has bornite within it. So it's actually at a lower level than in the Mary area. With porphyries and epithermals, you'll get epithermals laterally and above a porphyry system. And we think that Williams could be the cause of this Hank system, but there's likely a bigger target at depth here. And there's untested chargeability anomalies underneath the best areas of mineralization within the Hank trend. So, there's a number of different targets here. Rojo Grande and Felsite Hill are at the very top. You can see these bright Gaussons here. Rojo Grande is actually right on the red line, and you actually have host mineral cover that actually covers a broad area there where the geochem gets depressed down in here. So that target in itself is bigger, but we like this idea that you have potential for finding a fully intact system, which is not that common in the Golden Triangle due to all the glaciation. Everybody touts, going to the edge of a glacier to find something new. Well, that's nice, but it might be fully eroded too. You might just be getting the bottom of a porphyry. So what we see here is a fully intact system, a lot of room to expand upon the epithermal system, but also, we can hunt porphyries at depth underneath it. So I alluded to there being large untested chargeability anomalies. This one in particular we're interested in. It does have IP draping over top of it. I'm just going to touch on some of the mineralized intercepts here, though. So I said around 12 grams over 20 meters. There's also a lot of broad intercepts, though. Down at Flats to the south, historic drilling noted that there was potassic alteration, no copper grades analyzed, still drilled from near surface and open-ended 75 meters of 0.43 gold in more disseminated mineralization. So there's a lot of potential for everything here. You've got your high-grade intercepts. There's BG has been hit down here. Hank is a Brucejack age system, so theoretically you might be able to get into some bonanza grades such as that. But the porphyry story here is really the ultimate prize here. So Williams is the other porphyry deposit on the project. It sits within that trend that I just showed. It's a system that was outlined in 2018, 2019. Not a lot of drilling, around 6,000 meters of drilling have gone into this. They've hit some really good copper grades that is, quite a bit higher than what you see at Mary. So that gives us clues to what we might hit at depth when we drill deeper at Mary or find that center of the sphere. You get beautiful looking rock down here. It has been age dated. So it's 188 million years that puts it in that KSM spectrum. And it is actually open to the east. So there is potential to find more to this system. And there's potential to find more of these. Porphyries do often occur in clusters as seen in the Sulphurets district. This is a good photo outlining the area here. So you got right at the very high levels of the system right here. You've got an epithermal system stretching with a broad alteration anomaly. And then in the valley bottom, you've got Williams. So this is similar to Mary in that it's a huge alteration footprint that hasn't fully been explained yet. And one thing to note is pretty much all the drilling of the epithermal system here was done in one direction, either to the west or to the east. And there wasn't a lot of, there's no leapfrog model. I'll just let Gayle take over here. She's a structural whiz.
Yeah, I mean, really, we came up with kind of one main structural trend that shows up throughout the system. And we were surprised to find all the drill azimuths were parallel to that trend. And in other words, there are no drill holes that actually cross that structural geometry. And it's a pretty significant gap in exploration when we're talking about high grade gold systems and looking at comparables at SNP and Brucejack, like similar age, comparable deposit types, right? These are intermediate sulfidation epithermal systems. So we think there's a lot of room to add value with even the shallow drilling.
So next steps here are very similar to what we need to do in the Mary area. Leapfrog modeling, I think, is going to provide a lot of value for us here. We did have a top-notch mapper out there. She did her PhD on the Lahire mine. We had her out there this summer remapping a bunch of areas for us and providing a really solid interpretation. So that's going to feed into our model. I'd like to do more IP on this. There's pretty limited coverage. That one image I showed you was just a couple lines. Rojo Grande, for example, doesn't actually have any IP coverage beneath it. So there's still a lot of value to come out of this. And I think there actually is some pretty easy pickings with the epithermal system, testing new drill orientations of these high-grade intercepts. So with that in mind, just a little overview of Brucejack. The epithermal system here, I would like it to be part of our focus going forward, but we can't spread ourselves too thin. So we'll see how financing is in the future. But it's pretty impressive. The system has a very similar footprint to the Brucejack system. It's same age. You've got your resource outlines here. In blue, you've got your quartz sericite pyrite alteration, and then you've got the same Hazelton unit jack formation that this mineralization is coming into. Do you want to add anything to this, Gayle?
I guess just kind of broadly that these intermediate sulfidation gold systems are kind of following this northwesterly trend. You can see they're both actually quite similar. And then you have this distribution of basins that are masking the mineralization. And that's something really important came up in the mapping work that we had done this year is these kind of thin rocks like draped over top of mineralization.
Well, I'll briefly touch on Rainbow and then we can move to Q&A. So Rainbow here, this trend is the least advanced of the three. 5 drill holes have been completed. One of them returned 0.76 gold over 91 meters. Looks slightly different than everything that's been intercepted across the rest of the property. Looks like the porphyry, the gold-rich porphyry systems you get in the Maricunga belt, where you get really thin, high-grade veins over a broad area. What's interesting at Rainbow is it's a really broad area of till cover. If you look at this image here, it's pretty easy to hide a deposit here. It hasn't had an IP survey done on it. To have that kind of a drill intercept in the Golden Triangle without a lot of follow-up, without any IP, is pretty significant, and it's a good opportunity. It's a strong geochemical anomaly. It's actually the strongest sulfur anomaly on the project in soils. So there's likelihood that represents a big masked phyllic zone related to a porphyry system here. Very similar magnetic signature to the Mary system. Very good target, but a little earlier on the pipeline. Ridge, similar thing, big gold signature here, copper signature, pretty impressive silver grades as well. Rock samples up to 59 grams gold. Huge alteration footprint across here, no IP coverage. There's even limestones kicking around, so there's potential for skarn mineralization of higher grade. I think the point of highlighting these right now is just to illustrate that there's a big pipeline on this project, and this is the kind of thing that majors want. Seeing things like this in the Golden Triangle without IP represents a great opportunity for discovering porphyry systems, and we've secured this large piece of ground. So with that, I think we can move to the Q&A.
Thank you, Dustin and Gayle. So just a quick question about Mary. Can you tell us a little bit about the historic depth of drilling and where Kingfisher sees the potential for discovery? Is it at depth? Is it on strike? Is it both?
Yeah, so we think there's potential at depth underneath Mary. There's been one deep drill hole that was about 650 meters where they got out of mineralization and then actually back into it for the last 50 meters. And the drill core from that looks pretty good. And it's very evident that they just got into a post-mineral intrusion. It was drilled steep, so it could have hit a dike, a post-mineral dike coming vertically, which could appear to be wider than it is because the hole is angled steeply. So there's still a lot of potential underneath Mary, but we think the really big bulk tonnage prize there is underneath cover there to the south at our root zone target area. Gayle?
Yeah, I would just add that, in Dustin's talking about there's only one hole that really drilled below Mary, and it actually didn't even cross the axis of mineralization. When you look at it in 3D, it really collars on the flank and stays in the flank, and it doesn't even get through the chargeability anomaly that's centered on Mary. So yeah, that at depth potential at Mary really hasn't been tested at all. We just get some clues from that one hole that are really encouraging, actually.
Okay, thank you. And how come nobody ever tested that barren cover zone that you guys stepped out into?
So I think it's a combination of a few things. One, in better markets, people were drilling this project. There was a lot of easy pickings with mineralization coming to surface. It's risky drilling undercover. You'd rather, why would you drill a hole undercover and not collar in mineralization if you can collar in mineralization? A lot of people aren't willing to do that. So that's one reason. Other reasons are, this project hasn't seen a lot of drilling since 2012. And I think in that time frame, probably around that time was when Red Chris started pulling out really nice intercepts, drilling deep. So I think there's been a lot of understanding of drilling deep in these systems. You can actually really get into impressive grades, and they've done that with the other drilling underneath Kerr in the Sulphurets district at KSM, drilling under Iron Cap. You can drill down and hit things. Even at Goldstorm on the Treaty Creek project, they didn't really hit much copper grade until they started drilling deeper there. And recently, they've actually started to pull nice copper intercepts. So I think it's a combination of things. But I think with metal prices hopefully trending upwards here, I think we're in a better position to take more risks for a bigger prize.
Thank you. And we have some audience questions. One, can you provide some insights on the size of the targets, Mary, Williams?
Yeah. So at Mary, it's like a 1 billion ton target. We're trying to find something like a KSM, like a Red Chris. We're not trying to find a 200 million ton deposit. We're trying to find, a 500 million to 1 billion ton target. At Williams, I'm not sure unless it's faulted off. The way it looks right now, I don't see 1 billion ton potential right there, but it could be effectively a pimple off a bigger system, or it could be part of a cluster. And the grade is pretty good there. So I would say that's interesting too. Underneath Hank, there could be something lurking as well. We're excited about that. But the epithermal system there as well, it does actually have the extent to make a large epithermal system similar to Brucejack.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think that with big porphyry districts where you're getting multiple porphyries, it's most common for the larger ones to be centered in the broadest kind of alteration of the district. And you can get lateral, smaller bodies more in the flanks of that. And, Williams does lie at the flank of that broader Hank system. And I would describe Mary the same way. So what we're seeing is potential for something really at KSM scale, just based on alteration scale. And then potentially these relatively small porphyry systems that are lateral to that. And that's typical to see in these big districts where you're getting multiple emplacements.
And they can coalesce at depth. So that's part of our idea too at Mary area is that it likely does. The IP would signify that they are connected. And it's given the shape of the mountain and whatnot, theoretically, if the target we're after is there, this could all fit into an open pit.
Got it.
Yeah, what we see here and in other districts is the the zonation of the systems overlap. So the spacing isn't so much that you finish one system and start another, but it's quite a messy coalescence of mineralization. And so it can be really hard to tease those out separately, but that's our interpretation.
Thank you. And then more audience questions. Do you plan deep IPMT before drilling in 2024?
Potentially. I wouldn't say we've committed to any plan yet. I think there's targets we could test already at Mary without that. And maybe we could do the MT somewhere else. Don't have any firm commitment on anything yet.
Okay. And a follow-up question to that, you have many targets. Can you talk a little bit about the priorities for 2024?
So priorities for 2024, a lot of this is going to be driven by our biggest shareholders and what they want to see drilled. I'm pretty damn positive we're going to go and test this root zone target. And I would also like to test our structural modeling at Hank and potentially drill underneath it. So it varies on how big the program is, but we will definitely be testing at Mary. There's no doubt about that.
And remind us again, is all of Mary permitted for drilling, like all of the?
Yeah, but once we receive this next permit, the entirety of the favorable trends will be permitted. Right now, Rainbow Trend and Mary Trend are permitted, and it's more drill holes than we could do.
All right.
Permitted for IP as well.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you. So I think those are all the questions I had. I know Deborah had some corporate questions.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks, Magda. So just a couple corporate questions for you guys. So looking at exploration activity in the Golden Triangle, it seems that a lot of juniors who were previously active there pivoted towards projects in other jurisdictions or towards commodities other than copper and gold. Is that accurate in your opinion? And if so, why?
Well, a lot of people chased lithium the last 2 years because it was the flavor of the year. We didn't, because we're sticking to our guns. We're not lithium explorers. We're copper, gold, porphyry, and epithermal. That's really our wheelhouse. So I would say you're always going to see that in any jurisdiction. You're going to see people chasing that. They might be the groups that don't have the best technical teams, maybe more promotional type companies. So I think that's always the case. The groups that have the big district plays, they're charging full steam ahead. Seabridge isn't going to switch. We're not going to switch. We had that opportunity, when we decided to pick up a new asset and kind of reboot the company. Some people asked if we were going to go look for a lithium play or something like that, and it was a hard no. That's not our skill set. That's not where we offer a niche opportunity. Looking in the Golden Triangle was, which is why we were happy to pick up that project. So I think some people switched out of there, but I think the really good groups that I would invest in are still there.
Okay. And can you remind us of the government incentives in place for copper exploration in BC?
Yeah, so you normally get a 100% flow through tax credit. You get an additional 30% when exploring for critical metals, and you need to basically make an argument that 50% of what you're going after is going to be the value is going to be greater than 50% is going to come from critical metals. So we can, when we're looking for a copper gold porphyry system, I think it's pretty, accurate to argue that if you're drilling for the guts of one of these systems, you are going to have a lot of the value from copper. There's molybdenum as well here, which is a critical metal. Hank, that wouldn't count. That's a gold silver system. So, you could raise some money that way, but you can also just raise normal flow through and have the flexibility to spend it wherever you want, or the charity flow through. I think right now I was quoted at something like a 1.4 or 1.45 delta is what the rates are right now. So you can still get a big premium by doing that. And the benefit of the charity flow through is that tax benefit has been stripped. So, people from around the world can buy the back end of that. And then you don't have any risk of people selling and just keeping the tax benefit.
Mhm. Okay, and last question. So you have a sizable exploration portfolio for a junior company. Are you looking to make any changes to its composition or structure?
So the main projects we've been advancing in addition to this have been Tibbert, where we've done really small incremental work programs to maintain the claims, but also de-risk it and advance our understanding. So, in the kind of $100,000 a year range, we've been doing work there. We've done regional airborne magnetics. We've done regional stream set sampling there. That's a currently producing and historically producing placer district. So that one, we're not going to spend a lot more money there. We want to keep it because we are bullish on gold in the future here, and it will have some value for shareholders at some point. Gold Range, those claims are actually in good standing till 2033, based on the work we've done. And when I say in good standing, it means there's no holding costs. So we don't have to do anything there, and we can wait for a better gold market. Whether it be us that go there, or we do a spin out, or we bring in a partner to fund exploration there, there's optionality there that is, a bit of built-in value into the company, and the fact that we have no pressure. We can just sit and wait for something to change in the gold space. That's what we're going to do.
All right. Makes sense to me. I don't see any additional audience questions. Was there anything that you wanted to chat about today that we didn't cover?
I think we've covered everything. I think it's a pretty good summary. Always reach out if you got questions. Email me at dustin@kingfishermetals.com, not info@, because that email account is filled with spam. Or just send me a message and we can set up a phone call.
Sounds good. Or if anyone wants to reach out to Adelaide Capital through any of our social media messaging boxes or our info email, that's fine too. Always happy to set up a call or get some questions answered. Thanks to everyone that participated today, and thanks to you, Dustin and Gayle, for providing an update.
Thanks, Deb. Thanks, Meg.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Have a great afternoon.